All right. I think we're live. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. If anyone in the chat can hear me, just push 1. I don't even think my mic is set up correctly. Okay, put some volume on it. Oh, okay, I got a confirmation. Thank you for the confirmation. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 459. Please hit the like button as you come in. Share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. Document description beneath the video. Black Cannabis chat is tonight. So we will be talking about cannabis and its relation to the continent. Learn some very interesting information while over there. Link in the chat for you to click upon. If you want to engage in discussion, just raise your hand. And one of us can acknowledge you and advance you to the panel. While we wait for people to join, roll out some music. I know you're digging this.
Man, it's real heads over here. I don't know what y'all been told.
I figured I would take you back. I figured. I see Ray
What up?
in the chat likes it, so she's dancing. But yeah, man. Quick shout out to people in the chat, man. Ronan Black, what's going on? Black Scorpion, good evening. Rainy Woman, good evening to you. Mark C. Peace. Danielle Gardner, how are you doing? Gary Z. Net, what's going on? Albert Bird, what's good? Woman of the Past, good evening to you. Yeah, man. So interesting discussions that was happening the last few days when I was on the continent. And so I just wanted to make sure I brought this to light. I see that Woman of the Past has some comments in the chat. She said that actually I was wondering if there is any co-ops with the cannabis industry. And that's an interesting question because that is how the cannabis industry, at least out west, is how it's playing out, right? This whole social equity piece. And so
that's how it started.
Yeah. Yeah. And so co-ops are the the defining piece behind the social equity platform. At least in where I live, that's how it's being pushed. To have more stakeholders and investors and stuff like that. And it's not fully there's no full real or actualization to the piece, but that's the direction that they're going into. So so I just wanted to throw up a couple of flyers. I think that's relevant to what's going on here. So cannabis industry, hemp industry is a part of the agricultural industry. It's not some separate piece where people just smoke it, for a hobby. No, this is about industrialization. And so Africa actually has the Agritech 2020 conference this week. I know a lot of people aren't going to be able to get to it, but I'm just putting it out there as a FYI that's what's going on over there. International Conference on Plant Tissue Culture and Plant Biotechnology, Africa Agritech, South Africa. So Africa Agritech offers these days, 3 days of unparalleled discovery, exploration, and networking. The event offers a multi-tiered expo and conference program that will investigate the impact of the latest technologies in science and technology, empowering agricultural producers to achieve greater efficiency, productivity, and profitability going into the future. Africa Agritech focuses on assisting producers to navigate the evolving agricultural ecosystem. A fully integrated expo floor will showcase future trends, technologies, and techniques available. So what they're talking about here is traditional classic farming being paired with technology, IoT, Internet of Things, 5G, 4G, 5G internet connectivity, Wi-Fi, drones and things of that nature, sensors in the ground, things like that, even satellites for that matter. That's how they're thinking over there. So Africa Agritech, South Africa, that's definitely something I wish I had been able to attend. I didn't think about it when I was over there.
I wish I could attend that, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people don't really know that this is the new agriculture now, right? Growing cannabis. You're going to see as we get through the through the docket that this is the direction that the continent is moving into. So that just putting this out there as a FYI, Agritech 2020, this is what's popping over there. So,
but Mike, just as a just as a statement of fact, though, man, look, we've been pushing cannabis and interaction with the continent since the first country went legal back in 2017.
Mhm.
So this is an ongoing narrative we've been pushing. This isn't nothing. This isn't a new discovery. We're just now, as we've progressed into 2020, we're now covering the actual goings on of what's happening on the ground there, given that Mike was just there.
Yeah. And here's the next one. This one is Agritech Africa again. The International Agricultural Technology Conference and Exhibition, Agritech by the King's Exhibition. This one is Wednesday, June 17th to the 19th of this year. So same thing like before, just a different date. So many things that's popping off over there. Let me just read this caption real quick. The resurgence of the African continent has agriculture at its heart, and crop and food management is an essential part of readying the continent to meet its unmatched potential. Agritech Africa 2020 creates a platform to take on pressing challenges faced within the agricultural sector and find solutions that will allow for sustainable economic growth. So they're looking at this from a capitalization perspective. The event will showcase leading South African agriculture and food processing technologies with delegations from other parts of Africa contributing to the exhibition. A conference with national and international expert committee members will focus on the management of land and water resources, food security, as well as the development of an innovation ecosystem. Developments in the South African agriculture and food processing industries will be given primary focus with the objective being to attract importers from around Africa, India, and Middle East. Agritech Africa 2020 will provide countless business and growth opportunities with maximum exposure to key players in the industry and will serve as a meeting place for professionals within the industry to make new and lasting connections. So they're talking about social networking. We, the management team at the King's Exhibition, look forward to having you join us. Yeah, that's what's popping over there. You know, this is going to be June 17th to the 19th. So just an FYI.
Agritech.
Yeah.
Agritech Africa. Okay.
Yeah. So Agritech, you know, for people who are maybe lost on this and not really understand or having the following, classic farming marred with or married to fourth industrial emerging technologies is what they consider agritech now.
The stuff that engineering cannabis always talks about, the blockchain applications to cultivation and all that, that's the tech and the agritech.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're replacing I don't want to say you're replacing the Farmer's Almanac, but in so many ways you kind of are with algorithm.
I think you're enhancing it, right?
Yeah, actually, you're right. It actually enhances. You're right.
Yeah, I don't think the almanac really has changed all that much. I think you know, Benjamin Banneker was right on the money, but
I think blockchain just does it. It makes it that much more effective and efficient, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, blockchain would actually create a ledger, right? So for people who listen to this don't understand what we're talking about, most farmers in these rural areas don't keep any records on books. They just kind of farm and that's it. They don't really like to deal with paperwork because either for literacy purposes or just out of sheer neglect. What blockchain would allow is for the government to keep track of produce and things of that nature that is being produced by the farmers, and so that they get a better stipend and so that they get better results in return on their investment. So it's a distributed ledger. If the farmers aren't going to do the work themselves, then the ledger will keep track of all this type of stuff, and it's publicly available for the government because it's a public entity. So that's why it's important.
And these are the same things over the last couple of days that we've been talking about in terms of like, okay, if you're gonna institute infrastructure, you may as well go ahead and start with the future forward technology.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you have any stream reviews you want to?
You know what? I actually do. My daughter is at a birthday party right across the street. Let me give her let's go through the document, man. I'll pull the reviews up. We'll do it towards later.
What's going on, Engineering Cannabis?
Yo.
Hey, what's going on, man?
All right, man. Put some volume on your mic, brother.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, I was just listening about the blockchain and the application of blockchain, especially in the cannabis space, is going to be versatile from quality to logistics to training, especially keeping records on different strains and all that. It's going to be a part of it. Mm-hmm. And basically based on what happened in the vaping industry, blockchain will be needed as soon as possible, especially in the cannabis space.
Are you saying that the vape industry is like kind of like a good case study for?
Yeah, with the contamination problem that killed like 3 or 4 people, mm-hmm. They couldn't trace that. They couldn't trace where it came from. It took them months just to trace where it came from. And if the blockchain technology was implemented, it would have taken them minutes or even hours to just trace where that problem came from. And even then, if you have that blockchain implemented, if you sell goods that are contaminated in stores, the stores won't carry it because customers can scan quickly with their phone and see if that's a registered product on a blockchain network.
Or an alert, right? So let's say like through the point of sale, right? So you're scanning all of the product that goes into a given store, right?
Yeah.
And so let's just say through your blockchain application, let's say that we're tipped off that there is like a contaminated product. Like literally you can like send an alert to all of the individual stores who bought that particular batch and say pull.
And the blockchain will be, the place it's going to be implemented with the quality labs, mm-hmm. where information of all the quality products is collected. That's where the information will be gotten from, the labs itself. So when the labs take quality tests, they put it in a blockchain database or blockchain block, and automatically you can basically see it, and it doesn't change too. So that's going to be the main hub of the blockchain application, especially in the cannabis space.
Yeah, and in America, we have something called the Food and Drug Administration that would actually...
Yeah, the FDA.
Yeah, and you also have the Public Health Commission, because they would be the ones who oversee...
And the USDA and the FDA will apply blockchain in not only quality, but also management of their requirements. So it's going to be a huge application. If you know how to do it, you can sign up a contract with the government and implement that.
Oh yeah, but because I just wanted to go back to your point that you brought up about the 4 people dying. In Massachusetts, we actually, the government actually banned all of those things.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah,
really?
They banned it. Yeah, they banned it until they could figure out where it was coming from. They knew it was coming from.
You can't buy no vape products there?
No, they've banned flavored vaping products.
They banned the pens, and so they took back to use them.
Okay.
Right, so they had to trace it back, and I think they traced it back to China, but it was just a matter of where exactly did it come from?
Where, right.
So
and also remember, China is now one of the biggest suppliers of CBD. With this coronavirus right now, the blockchain technology would be even needed right now because of the coronavirus.
Actually, that's what China's working on. I didn't get to that. I was going to get to that tomorrow. Right. That's exactly what China is building right now. They've already built the blockchain to manage all of it.
But yeah, now, and the problem now is the blockchain. The question now is trusting the information going into the blockchain, trusting the labs and all that, making sure the labs actually give good reports, accurate reports. Then because the blockchain is useless if you put discredited reports in the blockchain.
Right.
So now the goal now is to basically monitor the labs itself and make sure they report what's actually going on. But even though they report bad reports, you can still trace it. And that's the good part. You can trace, when something happens, you can trace it immediately.
All right, let me get to this next article from greenentrepreneur.com. the African cannabis market could reach $7.1 billion by 2023. Immense markets, both domestic and for export to Europe, are available if African countries repeal prohibition. In the global cannabis landscape, Africa is an overlooked market. This is due to a number of factors, such as the illegality of the plant across the continent and the poor economic conditions that many African countries face. Africa has the potential to become an enormous cannabis market due to the large population and favorable climate that makes growing weed easier than in neighboring Europe. A new report by Prohibition Partners suggests that by 2023, the African cannabis market could reach $7.1 billion. Africa has a long history of growing and consuming cannabis. In most countries on the continent, the plant is illegal, although it remains widely cultivated and consumed, according to Prohibition Partners. The UN estimates more than 38,000 tons of cannabis are produced across Africa each year, which results in a black market worth billions. Out of 54 countries on the African continent, only 3, Lesotho, South Africa, and Zimbabwe, permit medical use, while Zambia has legislation allowing medical marijuana that has not been enacted. No African country have clear legislation allowing for recreational use. In South Africa, recreational use is illegal, but cannabis was decriminalized for private cultivation and consumption. In Egypt, recreational use is illegal, but tolerated. In Morocco, the prohibition of medical and recreational use is often unenforced, although it is illegal. The first and only country in the region that allows legal cultivation is Lesotho, a landlocked mountainous country that has a favorable climate, abundant water, and fertile soil for cannabis growing. In other countries such as Ghana and Nigeria, cannabis is grown illegally, typically for export. Legalization could result in a huge market and great opportunities for businesses that would pay taxes and help enrich the region, according to the Prohibition Partners. In Congo, a 100 kilogram sack of cannabis costs between $96 and $128.
Wait, how much?
$96 to $128.
And how much? What was the amount?
100 kilograms.
Oh, okay.
Significantly higher than maize, which fetches $54 for the same volume. Cannabis could also create legal employment opportunities. According to the Morocco Network for Industrial and Medical Use of Cannabis, cited by Prohibition Partners, the clandestine cannabis industry in the country is valued at $10 billion.
Dude, it's all exported to Europe.
And employs 800,000 people. Overall, Prohibition estimates the African cannabis market could be worth $7.1 billion by 2023. The bulk of this value is allocated to the recreational market, $6.3 billion. The medical market estimate is much smaller, about $800 million and around 420,000 patients.
Hey, Mike, can I just say something real quick? I don't like that. I don't like what they just said right there. Because I think, and I want to say that might be like a purpose statement that was made, that like the medical industry, and I'm pretty sure engineering cannabis will back me on this, is only worth to the tune of $800 million across the whole continent.
Maybe because of the illegality of it, right? So they can't really, it's not legalized to use.
But were they estimating that? Are they estimating that $7 billion of value? Are they literally just basing that based on like Lesotho, Zimbabwe, and Nigeria?
I think the exportation to Europe is what they're counting.
That's what they're doing. Okay, all right.
I think exportation.
Okay.
I think that number is kind of low.
That was my thought.
That number is skewed based on unless they accounted criminal seizures and all that. That number is low, because in terms of cannabis, it's especially in the exportation to different from different continents to Europe, it's high. So that amount, they didn't account for everything in that amount. Because the usage of cannabis, especially if you look at the WHO document, it's stated that Africa has a huge amount of cannabis users. And
Yeah.
even though it's illegal, but the WHO reports even the highest users countries, some of the African countries come in, I think, second or third of the highest users countries of cannabis. So that number is kind of low. But if you want to have more information, just check the WHO report, the World Health Organization report on cannabis and the continent. That's where you see what's going on with cannabis itself.
All right, let me get to this. Even though cannabis is mostly illegal in Africa, in the few nations where it is legal, some international companies have already established a presence. Lesotho, in particular, has attached the attention of foreign investors, given the possibility to cultivate cannabis for export. Last year, Supreme Cannabis Company Incorporated invested $10 million in Medigro Lesotho, acquiring a 10% stake. Another Canadian cannabis company, Afria Incorporated, went even further and formed a joint venture with South Africa-based Verve Group of companies. The joint venture, Cannabis Africa, acquired a stake in licensed producer of medical cannabis extracts in Lesotho, Verve Dynamics, for $4.05 million Canadian. The biggest deal in Lesotho by a foreign company was made by Canopy Growth Corp. In May 2018, the company purchased Daddy Can Lesotho, which has a license to cultivate, manufacture, supply, hold, import, export, and transport cannabis and cannabis resin. The total value of all stock deal was around $28.8 million at the time, Canadian. Tilray has not invested in cannabis businesses in the region, but it did start exporting medical cannabis products to South Africa last year. Similarly, Nuvera signed an agreement to supply 3 tons of purified THC and CBD extracts per year to Verve. So,
Wow.
But
No, you good.
So there's a growing industry over there that we have to pay attention to. They're opening up the markets for foreigners to come in.
Yeah, we've been saying this.
Go ahead. What I'm seeing is that there's an unexplored market, a huge unexplored market, especially in the cannabis side, especially in the continent. When you deal with an unexplored market.
We'll give him a few seconds, but
Okay. Hey, Mike, real quick, I want to shout out all the new peeps. I guess there's a few people I read in the comment, man. They popped in here because I guess the title ended up in their feed or something. So they're first timers. So hey, welcome.
Yeah, and so there's an industry that's growing over there that the U.S. is getting left behind on. Unfortunately, yes, all of these state rights issues, and I saw A&E, they have this police show on there, reality police show on there, and they always pulling over guys and they're busting them for smoking a joint in their car. In some places in the South, man, that's just an arrestable offense. I thought that was ridiculous. I couldn't understand it, but the continent of Africa is moving in a direction that I think is positive, man. An estimated $7.1 billion by 2023. I think that's good.
Yeah, man. And I'll tell you right now, dude, one of my all-time favorite strains is from Africa. It's from this Durban Poison. Like, Africa's got some legit shit.
Mm-hmm.
Real talk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the land is fertile for it, right? I don't know. I'm not a cultivator, so I don't know. So how much water do you need? How if you can answer that?
I guess it kind of depends on the method. If you're doing hydro, obviously you're going to need more water. But I would say when you get into if Zone was here, he could really speak on it. But I know for me, I just basically grow outdoor. So it's kind of like any other plant. You're just going to water based on need.
In terms of water, it depends on the grow you grow in terms of the
Right.
cultivation size.
Yeah.
So it does utilize a lot of water, a lot of resources, a lot of, especially electricity. You utilize a lot of electricity and a lot of water. So a lot of resources will be needed. So it's a very expensive crop to grow. But there are ways to basically make it more efficient. And that's what that's why I'm looking at also technology on making your grow more efficient in terms of utilizing certain solar activities and other aspects of electricity, because that's the biggest problem in cannabis growth.
Yeah. The days on the continent are actually pretty long too. You know, it could be like 6:30, 7 o'clock, it's still daylight out. So
I mean,
And I was
those,
talking about the opportunities in the cannabis space, especially in a market that's not been tapped yet. So this is a market that hasn't been tapped yet, that hasn't been looked at. And we still have more and more cannabis products being formulated with the
wait,
inception of.
engineering.
Yep.
When you said the market, that's what are you speaking to specifically when you
I'm
say that?
talking about basically formulating right now the market, the medical, and not every country in the continent has basically realized
Right.
the benefits of medical cannabis. And when I say tapped, I mean if you live in the United States or you live in Canada, and currently they are working on ways to make that commercialized cannabis itself. So if you can study how these companies commercialize cannabis, how they grow cannabis, and how they basically implement technology, when the market in the African market starts opening up, you can be the forefront, basically leader in implementing what Canada and the United States have implemented, or what things they've done wrong, what regulations they've been implementing, how logistics works. You can
Now,
basically be the guiding force on that.
I mean, that's kind of what we would like to do. You know, this is all very, you know, ground floor what we're talking about right now. You know what I mean. I know. I think on a previous discussion, engineering, you said that so internationally, the uh, the THC, the legal THC level for hemp flower, for example, is 0.02, right?
Yeah, the regulation is
0.03 here.
0.02. Yeah.
Right.
So
See,
in Europe and Africa, 0.02. Only in the
right.
Americas is 0.03. China, 0.02.
Okay. Yeah. See, so you know, things like that where you know, it's going to require actually being there and actually um, getting more involved with the plant species there. I mean, it's not like you know, like I could take stuff from here and then go there and grow it, because you know a lot of the stock that hemp stock that I have here is all three, and it's basic. It's on the high end of two. I wouldn't be able to grow nothing that would be legal there, not with the strains I got here.
yeah, let me get to this next article. Actually, let me answer a question real quick in the chat. Vic Shepard asked, "Where's Nigeria and Tanzania on this?" So I think Nigeria is it's illegal, but Tanzania I have not heard anything about legalization over there. It doesn't surprise me that they could go legal, but the currency is in spiral. But you know, with the continent, man, anything is possible with these governments, man. Tomorrow morning you can wake up and you know you'll see a headline that says they're finally going
It's
legal.
legal. Yeah, and I was gonna say, you know, with them when they say it's illegal, what they mean by that is that there's no there's not statutes on the books that govern commercial activity. That's what they mean by illegal. That's why, like in Africa, it's like, dude, the shit grows wild. You just walk up on some bud. That's not. They ain't no one's tripping on the fact that the shit grows in the wild. It's
Right.
it's the commercial activity. See, because once we start talking commercial activity, now we're going down that slippery slope. See, so if we say it's illegal but it's not enforced, I think there was one country, Mike, that you mentioned who has those type of laws in the books. Basically, what that means is that look, you're just not selling this shit. This isn't, you're not, that's not going to become some sort of illegal driver or a driver for illegal revenue gains. That's not what we're doing.
No, it's illegal based on, again, commercialization. It's illegal to cultivate big batches. But in terms of usage, again, the World Health Organization has said most African countries have the highest usage.
Right.
Yeah, Espresso Beats asked what countries in Africa have the best climate for growing weed. I would think that any sub-Saharan African country will have
Right.
good,
Yep.
good climate. So
And coastal, if you're coastal.
yeah,
And engineering, you get and Mike, I know you want to get to this next article real quick. Engineering, give your take on this. Given the different type of strains that grow in various types of climates, would you say that Africa, pretty much no matter where you go, you could pretty much grow cannabis?
Yes, because remember the strains, especially, and it's also, I believe, it's more potent in most African countries and most, I believe, in Indian countries. But yes, you can grow it anywhere in Africa. And the potency should be more because of the fertility of the soil in Africa, more in African countries.
hmm
Okay.
So, yes.
yeah, good dirt over there too. So
Yeah.
all right, this one is from the Africa Report. Cannabis and the African green gold rush. While countries in the north of the continent are reluctant to authorize its production, in the south, cannabis cultivation, driven by the liberalization of North American markets, is perceived as a lever for development. Hemp production in Zimbabwe could even replace tobacco. Let me expand this out. Right now, the cannabis market attracts businessmen who have the whiff of sulfur. In the middle of the night, a rubber dinghy driven by two super powerful engines rushes towards the Spanish coast. On board are several hundred kilos of cannabis resin made in Morocco. On the Mediterranean, this type of expedition has become commonplace. Most of the refined products goes to Europe via clandestine channels. At the head of this traffic are kingpins like Mofid Bachibi, who from his Algerian hideout remains one of the major suppliers for the French market. But the North Africans are no longer the only ones to benefit from African know-how and keef. In North America, business is already strongly invested in cannabis, and the continent is playing a role. Last year, in anticipation of the authorization of recreational marijuana use in Canada and following the authorization obtained in a dozen U.S. states, several publicly traded companies such as Tilray, Canopy Growth, Supreme Cannabis, Afria, and Aurora Cannabis saw their value go through the roof to well over $1 billion. The medical uses of the molecules extracted from this plant are also fueling the craze. THC, which with its psychotropic effects, and CBD, with its relaxing properties, are widely recognized for their action in the treatment of pain, loss of appetite, migraines, insomnia, you name it. Manufacturers immediately exploited this radical re-imaging of cannabis by integrating CBD into the cosmetic and food products. At the forefront of this movement, Constellation Brands, manufacturer of Corona beer, invested more than $4 billion to take a 38% stake in Canopy Growth last year. Heineken has launched a cannabis-based soft drink in California and now intends to do the same in Canada, where brewer Molson Coors has also planned to market cannabis waters by December. While the speculative bubble has partly deflated, the markets all these companies are exploring remains promising. It is estimated at $150 billion worldwide and could reach, according to Barclays, $272 billion by 2028. Colombia, Uruguay, Thailand, and Israel, to name but a few countries, have changed their legislation to allow cannabis use, particularly medical, thus opening up new markets. Africa, a potential market of billion by 2023. The main actors in this sector are well aware of Africa's potential. Lesotho, Zimbabwe, and South Africa are part of the new movement. According to the prohibition partners, this sector, if legalized, could represent a market worth $7.1 billion in 2023 for the continent, including nearly $1 billion for the Moroccan kingdom alone, the world's largest producer of cannabis resin. The assessment of the Moroccan situation is very optimistic, as it is unlikely that the law will evolve so quickly, says Khalid Tenasti, Executive Secretary of Global Commission on Drug Policy. Anthropologist Khalid Mona says the debate on the legalization of cannabis, a new global green gold, while not taboo, insists remains blocked in Morocco. No government wants to be the one to move this culture practiced in the Rif since the 6th century to the right side of the law. Political parties like the WFP and Istiqlal use this issue in an opportunistic way, but nothing really moves, and the government is afraid to give a platform to the Islamists of the PJD because it would have to find a religious justification for this advance, he says. Too bad for them. However, about 50,000 hectares of cannabis are reportedly cultivated mainly around the town of Chichawan, providing a more or less direct livelihood for 800,000 Moroccans. The Tangier Tetawan Al Hasma Council voted in June to fund a study on cannabis cultivation, but this will not be enough to move the country forward, according to the experts interviewed. In 2010, the Royal Gendarmerie had already conducted a study on hemp cultivation, but this time using fiber, very low in psychotropic substances, insisted on its potential. For what progress? Noted the disillusioned activist, I'm not going to try to pronounce his name, organizer of parliamentary study day on cannabis at the end of 2013. Under these conditions, no industrial company dares to openly express its interest in this sector. It will be like Islamic finance. When the market opens, we will have dozens of projects, predicts Khalid Mona. We are also paying for the legacy of colonialization. Just look at the delay in France. Anglo-Saxon countries are more progressive on these issues. This is true. Indeed, it is Southern Africa that the most important advances in development of the cannabis industry are to be found. A pioneer in this field, Lesotho, led by King the Third, adopted legislation in 2008, making it possible to grow, process, export Makaton cannabis in Lesotho for medical use. Like Morocco, the cannabis trade, although illegal, has been a part of the habits of this small country of 2 million inhabitants since the 16th century, and trafficking to neighboring South Africa constitutes an essential additional income for many farmers. All right, the creation of 30,000 jobs expected by 2022. Low labor costs and the climate, 300 days of sunshine per year, low humidity, and a low polluted environment are all arguments for the companies that invest, says journalist Bernard. To this must be added benevolent tax legislation for foreign investors. By 2022, the government, which has already granted 70 licenses for sold for $30,000 and renewable annually, hopes to create 30,000 jobs. As proof of the importance attached to this new sector, the king personally attend the inauguration of the Verve facilities at the beginning of August. Planting takes place in the greenhouses where all employees wear gowns, masks, and gloves to avoid external contamination. These are almost clean rooms where the environment is almost 100% controlled. This is essential to obtain export authorizations to Canada, the United States, Europe, and Australia, explained Consulate Benjamin Generoy. Lesotho has taken up the challenge to see the sector, which is currently only export oriented, prosper. Local marketing, including the medical use, however, is not yet provided by law. So I'm not going to read this whole thing because I think this is beyond the scope of our interest. But the point of the matter here is that the market is popping over there for cannabis development.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
You know, as a tech person myself, there's a lot of opportunities to get into this on the tech side. But as the article stated, there is a other perspective, as we talked about this before, using shipping containers as laboratories, but they're talking about these big greenhouses being used as basically extra large laboratories, because you have to wear these sort of suits and it's kind of controlled. It's a controlled environment.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the big parts of it is the infused market is going to be big in the infused cannabis products, especially in some African countries. Like some African countries actually deal with teas and love teas. So an infused cannabis product with tea in it can sell immensely well. So you just have to study the landscape and see where you can infuse products in with cannabis, and then roll from there and walk into the medicinal side. So, like I said, teas, infused teas with cannabis in there can sell well. So you just have to know the market itself and research the market itself and see what's going on. But cannabis is going to be growing in the continent, and it's going to be big,
You know,
especially on the medicinal side.
you know, engineering cannabis, some of the shops out here, and I actually looked into this. You said tea, right? TEA? Tea?
Yeah, TEA, teas.
Yeah. You know
Yeah,
what?
coffee teas.
Yep.
And all
I
that.
got recipes for cannabis tea bags. So you'd use like a combination of various types of teas. You know, you maybe use like a bergamot, there's
Yeah.
chamomile, and
And
you know what I mean? And then you're gonna add in indica bud sticks, you know,
yeah,
the trichome sticks and all that type of stuff.
and
Those
market it,
those go ahead.
and you can market it as a highly oxidant rich product that's going to help both with the infused THC that helps you relax, and oxidants products that will help you boost your immune system. You can market it in different ways as a healthy product itself.
Yeah, because you know, it's funny when you mentioned that, because I've already seen those out here. I seen them actually. I saw those maybe 3 years ago, 2 3 years ago. Cannabis tea bags. So it's like it's a mix. It's a tea mix. So it's not just weed, right? It's gonna be like a regular, maybe like a Earl Grey or a black
Yeah,
tea, something like
yeah.
that. And then it's gonna have a strain that is complementary to that type of tea.
Complements, helps boost it up. Basically, market it as a cannabis strain that helps boost the
Right.
existing properties of the tea and makes you relax and makes it accessible to taking those oxidants in your body
Right.
and
I just wanted to make. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
make it more available, make it basically heighten the oxidants in the tea itself, maybe berry tea or all that. So the cannabis will help you relax and taking those oxidants and you enjoy it. So market it in such a way where you already know the benefit, you already know the science behind the tea and the cannabis. You already know some of the science behind it. So
Yeah.
don't use fake science. Use what already exists and then market it as so.
Yeah,
That's what I mean. It's like I've already seen the tea, and then I've also seen cannabis infused espresso shots.
Mhm. Yeah. So this article just kind of confirms what we discussed earlier, that Africa is going to is a new right market for cannabis production. Man, we talked about agri-tech before. You know, agri-tech, for those of you just falling into the chat, listening to this, agri-tech, classic agricultural production married to fourth industrial emerging technologies, digital transformation of agriculture from a classic perspective. This is something that's relatively new now. A lot of, you know, your big wigs, your big whales, yeah, they're involved in it, but at the ground level, this opens up a whole new market. So you don't need to be an expert to actually grow cannabis, or a farm for that matter, because what that's going to do is that, you know, you're going to be receiving information on your WhatsApp or whatever device that you have that can receive information to how to cultivate seeds and things like that. We do have something here in the United States called Urban Farming Institute. If you go back to the Black Brain Trust archives, you'll see that we talked about guerrilla farming back in like August or something like that.
Episode 190.
And in terms of growing, you will need some information. Like one of the biggest problems in the cannabis is basically pollination of female cannabis plants that basically turn to male. If you can solve that problem, which I'm trying to use AI to solve that, machine learning, on why female seeds gets pollinated where there's a presence of male seeds, what are the factors that contributes to that? But if you can find that solution, you can solve a lot of problems, especially in the cannabis space.
Oh, you know, the answer to that cannabis, you know, it's male seeds with select.
No, that's all.
Jokes, man.
Wait. Hey, wait. What were you trying to? What are you trying to figure out?
Basically when feminine cannabis products, basically when they get pollinated by male, introduced by male pollinated seeds, and it destroys the potency.
Yeah, because the thing about it is that the plant has to then redirect. It has to redirect its energy to creating seeds.
So the question is, why is it happening? What are the variables in there that causes that pollination? So,
wait. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What are the variables that causes the female seed to basically turn into male?
Wait, why? Females? I've always now when I've grown feminized seeds.
Yeah.
And let's just say I pulled a seed out of it, right? I was like, whoa, okay, huh? That seed ends up being 8 times out of 10 a feminized seed. So if I pop that seed, it's also going to be a female. Usually.
Yeah, but you remember there's some problems there was a problem I was looking at a case study where a farmer was trying to grow all female. Then one day he came out and all his plant turned to male. And
what?
He couldn't. Yeah, basically.
No, dude, that's nutrient. That's nutrients right there. It's either nutrients or that's going to be his light cycle. Because if one of those,
nobody knows directly what happens. I'm trying to figure out why that is. Pinpoint.
Well, because it's like a hormonal thing, right?
Yeah.
So the thing about it is that they don't turn male. What they do is they go hermaphrodite.
Yeah.
Because you have strains. And you also have to factor in, it's going to be dependent upon what strains they're crossed with. Some strains have more of a hermaphroditic lineage. So let's just say you created a strain and one of the strains that you use, you cross, say, chocolate Thai with it. Chocolate Thai is a hermaphroditic strain. It's a ruderalis. Right, you have indica, sativa,
ruderalis,
hemp, and then you have ruderalis. Ruderalis is a natural hermaphroditic strain. See, so if in the plant's lineage is a ruderalis strain, or if they're in that family tree, then that might be expressed.
But that's probably you're only basing it on the genetics. But I think there's also other influences outside genetics, environmental influences that also turn
that too. Yeah.
female. So yes, one part, that variable is genetics. Yes, that's one variable. But the other variables we need to account for. So that's what you have to look into. And if you find that, that's a research you can dig into and make a lot of money from that.
Now, in my research, I will say this, right? If a plant, let's say it's growing, and from my understanding, it's actually it's a survival mechanism. So you could have a feminized plant, but if it's stressed to the point where, I guess, in the plant's mind, right? In the plant's mind, it's endangered. What it will do is it will hermaphrodize itself to be able to create seeds in order to propagate itself.
So what are the environmental effects that makes that plant change that? What are the fear factors? So all these needs to be accounted for.
Right. Because
so that's what I was thinking.
The conditions that I'm speaking of would largely be artificial, right? Because these are guys who have encountered this type of stuff, but this is in a controlled environment. It's indoor.
Even biosecurity.
Let's say like their power went down. You know how it happens. Sometimes the pumps go out. The plants don't get
lights go.
Yeah, you know what I mean. The plants get stressed, and the next thing you know, they switch into a different mode. You know?
That's why I put it in an automated system, or again with biosecurity. Why they're looking at biosecurity in terms of what the viruses, or what are the viruses, or what are the contaminating factors that contaminate a huge set of crops? How can you trace that source of contaminants? So all these needs to be implemented in the cannabis industry, especially if you're looking into the continent. If you're growing outside and you have contamination, how can you trace that contaminant source? If you can trace it, you can eliminate it. So, and basically all these need to be placed in a huge grow itself. So these are technologies from biosecurity to automation to quality. There's a lot of tech that needs to be implemented in the cannabis space.
I agree. Yeah.
All right, let me get to this next item on the docket. It's from Technico 420. Africa is becoming an essential part of several cannabis producers' global growth strategies. During the last year, we have seen a considerable increase in the number of countries that have jumped on the legal cannabis bandwagon and legislation favorable to the industry. One of the best examples of this trend is related to the activity that is taking place in Africa, a market that is not even in the first inning of major growth cycle. Several companies have reported plans to enter Africa, and this is a long-term opportunity that we are bullish on. It will take several years, if not longer, for this market to scale, and today we have highlighted 3 companies that are focused on it. Spectrum Therapeutics, an attractive part of the Canopy growth story. Canopy Growth Corporation was an early mover on the African cannabis opportunity, and we believe that the market does not fully appreciate the growth prospects associated with it. When compared to its peers, the Canadian cannabis producer has some of the most attractive leverage to burgeoning international cannabis markets, and we are favorable on this aspect of the story. When it comes to the Canopy Growth, Spectrum Therapeutics is an important aspect of the business. Spectrum operates in Australia, South America, Africa, and across Europe, and its products are available in a wide range of potencies in formats that are designed to simplify the dialogue around strength and dosage by applying a color-coded spectrum to categorize medical cannabis. Interesting. In Africa, Spectrum Therapeutics has been granted a medical production license that covers 2 facilities in Lesotho. The facilities have 21 million square feet of outdoor grow space and 322,000 square feet of indoor, outdoor, and greenhouse space combined.
Hold on. 2 million outdoor and 300,000 indoor?
21 million outdoor.
Oh shit. They doing it big. That's big.
Yeah. We are bullish on the growth prospects associated with the licensed areas and will monitor how the team continues to execute. Spectrum Therapeutics owns one of the largest legal outdoor CBD cultivation sites in Africa, and we are favorable on the amount of value that can be generated through it. Spectrum Therapeutics also has leverage to the cannabis market in South Africa and previously acquired 12 hectares of land located in the Atlantis Economic Zone in Cape Town. The company has submitted the necessary applications for a cultivation and post-harvest processing facility license, which is expected to complement its current production capabilities in Lesotho. We believe that the Spectrum has visible growth prospects and are favorable on how this asset support the growth of the entire business. Last year, Canopy Growth issued an update on the opportunity in Africa, and we expect to receive another update on it in the near future. We believe that the market has discounted this aspect of Canopy Growth's business and are bullish on its long-term growth prospects. Going forward, we expect the international side of the business to play a more important role in the growth, and we'll keep an eye on how the story evolves from here. So this is all pointing back to South Africa. Last year, STEM Holdings Incorporated joined Halo Labs on a short list of companies that have leveraged the cannabis opportunity in Africa through a definitive agreement to acquire South Africa Ventures Incorporated, SAV. The U.S. cannabis company became levered to the emerging cannabis market through a joint venture with Profile Solutions Incorporated. One of the reasons we are excited about this opportunity is related to the preliminary approval that the joint venture has received to become the only licensed cultivation and processing facility for medical cannabis and industrial hemp in the Kingdom of Eswatini for a minimum of 10 years. SAV has an $11 million working capital surplus, and it was acquired for 8,250,000 common shares of STEM Holdings. When analyzing the growth prospects of associated with the joint venture, there's a lot to be excited about. According to the agreement, the joint venture will operate an advanced hemp and medical cannabis manufacturing facility to grow and cultivate cannabis in accordance with strict good manufacturing practices, good health standards, or global health standards. Distribute hemp and medical cannabis within Eswatini. Be the exclusive exporter within Eswatini for hemp and medical cannabis worldwide. Operate a medical cannabis research and development lab. Build a training facility to create jobs for local Eswatini citizens. Following the signing of the definitive agreement, STEM Holdings has become under pressure, and we continue to follow the opportunity. The company has attractive leverage and burgeoning markets in the U.S., and we are bullish on the focus of international opportunities. We believe that the market does not fully appreciate the growth prospects associated with STEM Holdings, and this is an opportunity that we will continue to closely follow. Halo Labs, I'm not going to go over all of this.
Mike.
Yes, sir.
Do you know what happened? Do you know what I got from this? The company has established itself as it's going to be the biggest exporter of that cannabis strain throughout throughout the world itself. Because if Coca-Cola wants that strain, guess who they're gonna reach? They'll reach out to that company.
Yep.
That company is setting itself to basically be a huge exporter and importer of cannabis goods. And what I'm seeing there, it's the opportunity, especially in import and export of cannabis, is going to be huge, because you're going to have to deal with not only the laws of the import and export, you have to deal with packaging. You have to deal with basically what kind of freight, how you're going to transport it, through sea or through air. And that's going to deal with different kind of packaging, different kind of laws. So the import and export is going to be a huge market in terms of cannabis.
Yep. All right, next item on the docket is from NASDAQ. Merck's Ebola vaccine approved for the use in 4 African countries. I'm not sure how this ended up on it, but we'll go through this. Merck announced on Friday that 4 African countries have approved the use of the company's Ebola vaccine. Enrollable, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Ghana, Zambia, and Burundi have all agreed to license the Ebola vaccine, with additional countries expected to approve the vaccine as well in the coming months. Enrollable had already received approval from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, back in December, while the European Commission granted the vaccine conditional marketing authorization just 1 month prior in November. The use of the vaccine is limited to people who are at least 18 years old, and while Enrollable has demonstrated effectiveness in protecting patients from Ebola, the exact duration of how long this protection lasts is still uncertain. Let me just what's going on here? Yeah, I don't know why this yeah, I'm not sure why this ended up on the docket. I believe there may have been some relation to cannabis strands being capable of fighting off Ebola virus. I don't know. I don't even know why that it was even thought in there, but
Okay. Well, I do know that I think it was it CBD? I think we covered it, Mike, maybe 3 months ago or something. Like there was an article that came out how I think it was either hemp or it was like CBD or cannabis, whichever, either one. They were looking at it in the future as being the backbone or the basis for flu vaccines. I don't know if you recall that article we covered, but they were talking about using cannabis and hemp derived compounds as the backbone or basis for vaccines. And I think the article we had covered then was flu vaccines. I can't see why Ebola would be any different.
maybe.
Yeah. That might have been the relevance though to for that article.
Yeah.
That article
Yeah, for whatever reason it ended up in there. What's going on, Nicole?
Yo.
What's going on, fellas? What's up?
Come on, man, Sean.
I already know.
What's
All right.
up, man?
What's going on? Cannabis, what's up, baby?
That's good.
we still got a rap. Man, I know
No
you're
problem.
down there in New Mexico, man. I'm doing
Yeah,
some stuff
we
up
gotta
here,
get
but
you-
I know
you
you're down there. I'm gonna get to you.
Definitely.
Land of the mesquites. All right.
Oh, Jesus.
But anyway, he getting busy though. He getting busy. Shit, he getting busy though. Screw that.
All right, let me get the next article. This one is from the African Exponent. Debunking colonial attitudes on cannabis for Africa's economic riches. What many are not aware of is how cannabis has always been used in Africa, but with the advent of colonialism, its use became criminal and the effects are still palpable right up to this moment. So the continent has the same issues that America has, where colonialism kind of punishes those who are not of privilege, demographic, the right to actually engage in the same exact product of consumption, while others who happen to be of pale skin tend to enjoy it.
And Mike, and I want to say, shit, I'll dig it up and post it in the chat. But we did a cannabis hangout maybe 4 or 5 months ago, called the Hidden History of Indigenous Cannabis Use or something like that. I'll dig it up and post it. But it kind of speaks to that right there, right? It's kind of like it was something that was just used. There was no benign thought about it until someone else came in and said, hey, wait a minute, we can commodify that. So let's tell them naughty for using that, and then we'll go ahead and commodify it for our own benefit.
Right. All right, let me get to this article real quick. The sad thing that has happened to Africa's consumption and economic use of cannabis is how it is mostly banned in many countries across the continent. It is arguably one of the most ubiquitous herbs on the continent, and yet, due to colonial regulations that are still being enforced, there are still barriers to the desired economic benefits that this herb offers. This herb confers on a society. African pre-colonial societies were pretty much fascinated and intrigued by the powerful effect of cannabis, such that its use was deeply embedded in their way of life. From recreational use to religious uses, cannabis could not be extricated from the Africans' style of living in a time where there was a humdrum existence. The consumption of cannabis was an entrenched feature in the fabric of African society, and it was only with the arrival of Europeans that the anti-cannabis sentiments gained momentum. In no time, the herb was classified in the same class as cocaine, meth, and other hard drugs, thus being effectively outlawed when, to the African, it is just deemed as harmless as a harmless substance that had its desired effects. There's quite a number of examples of substantiating how cannabis was valued in pre-colonial society. The cannabis plant is not indigenous to Africa. It was brought to the continent through contact with the Arabs. The earliest evidence of cannabis being used outside of Egypt is in 14th century Ethiopia. There, two ceramic smoking pipe bowls containing traces of cannabis were recently discovered. Bantu-speaking natives who originally were from North Africa carried the cannabis seeds to the south, and thus the existence of cannabis in the southern part of the continent. The use of cannabis as an intoxicant then spread to the other African tribes, such as the Bushmen and the Hottentots. By 1609, the plant was cultivated throughout Kafir near the Cape of Good Hope. Natives were referred to as Kafirs, and they ate the leaves of the plant and often became intoxicated. So that becomes I guess, an edible.
In its most rudimentary form, yeah.
Yeah, no brownies, yeah. Yeah. The Hottentots were a mixture of Egyptian soldiers who had deserted their post in Ethiopia around 650 BC, and Bushmen women intrigued the Boers due to their rudimentary lifestyle. But what drew their attention the most was their practice of using hemp, which they called daga. Jan van Riebeeck, history's infamous Boer and first governor of the Cape, noted that the hemp drugs their brain just like opium. By 1705, through interaction with the white man, the Bushmen, and the Hottentots, as well as other neighbors, had mastered the art of smoking the hemp. The inhalation of burning daga leaves rapidly spread to other tribes, and pipes became the new thing to these societies.
I know a little something about that.
Oh yeah, I bet. It is interesting to note the peculiar attitudes of white explorers, especially by the end of the 18th century. One such Dutchman, C.P. Thunberg, wrote, "Hemp is a plant universally used in this country, though for a purpose very different from that to which it is applied by the industrious Europeans. The Hottentot loves nothing so well as tobacco, and with no other can, they become so easily enticed into a man's service. For smoking and producing a pleasing intoxication, he finds this poisonous plant not sufficient strong, and therefore, in order to procure the pleasure more speedily and deliciously, he mixes his tobacco with hemp chopped very fine."
Woo!
Hmm.
Y'all wonder why I roll them in Dutchies?
Damn. Brother's been getting nice for quite a while.
Hey, he been getting nice for a good minute, fam.
Damn.
G. Thompson in 1818 commented on the use of hemp in Africa, which much disdain, referring to it as poison. He had his support in evangelists such as Hugo Hahn, who maintained that the use of cannabis was not in the best interest of the African or the Negro. To Hahn, the use of daga was a vile habit that forbade one from entering the kingdom of God. Henry Stanley, the American journalist, farmed for his encounter with David Livingstone, harbored the same colonial mindset towards cannabis, and this is manifested through his words. Certainly, most deleterious to the physical powers is the almost universal habit of vehemently inhaling the smoke of the cannabis sativa or wild hemp in a light atmosphere, such as we have in hot days in the tropics, with the thermometer rising to 140 degrees Fahrenheit in the sun. These people with lungs and vitals injured by excessive indulgence in these destructive habits discover they have no physical stamina to sustain them. The rigor of a march in a loaded caravan soon tells upon their weakened powers, and one by one drop from the ranks, betraying their impotence of infirmities. Historians have remarked about how Zulu warriors heavily relied on cannabis when going to warfare. Young Zulu warriors were especially addicted to daga, and under the exciting stimulation of the drug, were capable of accomplishing hazardous feats. Wrote A.T. Bryant, Sothos also drew inspiration from cannabis for heavy and effective onslaughts. Tribes such as the Bordama of the Southwest Africa venerated cannabis to the extent that they bartered daga for valuable commodities like cattle, goats, iron, and copper. In Zimbabwe, cannabis was reserved for its wisdom imparting capabilities, and it was used for curing ailments like epilepsy, known as pafari in the local Shona language. It was known for uplifting spirits and opening doors to the spiritual realm. In Zimbabwe, cannabis was crushed up into a powder. From there, it was mixed with snuff, known as boot, in the local Shona language, and sniffed through the nose, Al Pacino style. The herb was primarily a preserve for the elderly, as it was favored for increasing strength during work and confidence in battles. Cannabis was also preferred during traditional ceremonies, as the spiritual world favored mediums high on cannabis. It is clear beyond any reasonable doubt that cannabis throughout the whole of history has been used for medicinal and psychoactive purposes. Cannabis was even used for fiber in other plants of the world, such as Asia. These are the trends that reigned supreme before the Europeans made it their mission to conquer and subjugate the continent. And up to this day, cannabis is still used for these purposes, enhanced by improved scientific and medical research. The earlier sentiments against cannabis, which have been mentioned above, were reinforced by whites who came to fully colonize after the explorers. The white man got his foot on your throat. The existence of cannabis in Africa never sat well with the callous European settlers, who were hell-bent on destroying every element of African society that had defined who Africans are. By 1870, the settlers in South Africa passed a law prohibiting the smoking, use, or possession by the sale, barter, or gift to any coolies whatsoever of any portion of the hemp plant, Cannabis sativa. This draconian move had been actuated by the increased use of the plant by the Indian immigrants who had been forced to come to work under the colonial capitalist system in South Africa. Europeans erroneously believed that cannabis made these Indian workers and the Black population lazy and sick, and that it made these people liable to criminal acts. So now you see the formation of stop and frisk and other sort of policies. This was in Africa at the time. Keep in mind, this is not America. There was no effort to try and analyze what cannabis really did on a person, and this nonchalant attitude to marijuana, since Europeans highly favored alcohol and tobacco, resulted in punitive laws against the consumption of the plant. In 1922, cannabis in South Africa was classified as and designated as a hobby-forming drug. The issue was sent to the League of Nations Dangerous Drugs Committee under the government of Jan Smuts, so that cannabis would be bundled together in the same class as morphine, opium, and cocaine. 2 years later, cannabis was put under international drugs protocols. So now you understand why the drug policies of America came about. Stupid League of Nations and their colonial masters behind it. In South Africa, cannabis was said to increase sex between color lines, and calls for more stringent controls grew louder, especially after the unification of the colonies in 1910. It is, however, clear that in African society, cannabis was helpful for socializing, relieving pain and anxiety, and symbolized mature manhood too. The colonial public panics against cannabis that solidified into notorious statutes outlawing anything to do with cannabis needed to be revised and be debunked for the greater prosperity of the continent. The potential that the African cannabis industry holds if these colonial laws that are still prevalent today are abolished is vast. By 2023, it's projected that the cannabis industry in Africa could stand at a mammoth of $7 billion, money that should be funneled towards the uplifting the livelihoods of Africans. In South Africa, cannabis was said to increase sex between color lines. Looks like a lot of these mayonnaise girls are coming down here getting dom game ran on them after a few puffs, man. Getting torn out the frame.
Reefer madness.
Talk about SYSBM. It is now time for the cannabis industry to be fully legal and regulated. It is now time to demystify the colonial attitude towards marijuana that is still holding our continent back. It is clear that the continent has a rich history and legacy of cannabis consumption, but it is now imperative for policymakers in Africa to take heed of the growing demands to fully regularize the cannabis industry. So far, Zimbabwe, Lesotho, and South Africa have made headway progress of varying degrees as far as regularizing cannabis is concerned. Cannabis has always been in Africa, but the white man managed to twist that narrative so that the use of cannabis became evil. Cannabis is widely tolerated in Africa, and it is time that African countries throw away laws that are replete with racism. Yeah, African science, medical science, man, going back damn thousands of years, man. They were using cannabis for, epilepsy and shit like that, man.
We covered it. I posted the link. I think it was episode 190 something. The ancient history of cannabis, man. We covered it.
So medical science is now going back to history to see what uses cannabis is, and then applying basically westernized medical processes to see how it's be effective. So they're looking at history and seeing what they do, because right now the only approved drug for cannabis is for childhood epilepsy. So they're using history and then seeing what they can, what actually, how effective is cannabis in terms of what cured them historically.
Yeah, that Kemetian Kush. That's what we've been talking about. That's, you know, a lot of people don't, think that the Africans were just living in mud huts. No, man, they were practicing big science back then. Those pyramids ain't there for nothing, man.
We also covered the fact that back in those Cometian times, there was a trade going on between Egypt or Tamaray or whatever the hell you want to give it, whatever name you want to give it for the time that it existed. There was trade going on between Africa and India, specifically as it related to cannabis. Again, go reference the ancient history cannabis hangout that we did.
Man, they have found that there were cannabis and tobacco coming from freaking Egypt that they found in Mexico, man.
Bro, it was an ancient trade.
Ancient trade. They had this. We all know about Thor Heyerdahl and his and the ship he made, Kontiki, which he traveled 3,000 miles in. An ancient catamaran that he hand built, but by ancient methods and sailed over 3,000 miles across to South America from America. I mean, it's just we know that, but there was a rendition of a ship that was actually on the pyramids, and this one white sailor he built one up to scale and to mock scale. I think it was 32 foot, and he built it to scale, and they got in it just the way they saw it, modeled on the on the pyramid drawing, and they sailed it, and the individual got out of it and said, we have to take a different view as to ancient marining. The ancient mariners of ancient times. We have to take a different view. Basically, it was intercontinental travel. So that was going on.
They said it took 3 weeks to get from Nigeria to Venezuela.
Yeah. So they were doing this a long time, and we know it now. It's because a lot of stuff is being debunked, and now you even have the white. Not only Egyptologists, but how we say some of the people who study ancient civilizations, who are just looking at this and they can't even deny it anymore. So yeah, this has been going on a long time. So Egyptian tobacco and so forth was seen in South America. Also remember one of the oldest pyramids that you have in Peru is 4,000 years old, and they wasn't supposed to be that old, but here it is. It's there, and they can't really explain it. And here we are in Africa. You got these pyramids that have watering patterns on them, on the Sphinx, and even on the pyramids themselves that, would tell you that they're far older than 10,000 years old. But, anyway, all of this trade has been going on a lot longer than we want to talk about. And tobacco was I just bring it up as tobacco was one of the key elements that they've or key products that have been found on other continents that actually came from Egypt. So cannabis would be certainly a big part of that. And that was and not only did they go through South America, but I believe they went into Asia as well, as pyramids have been found there as well. So that trade, that cannabis trade, I believe, was worldwide.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing, man. A lot of people think that Africans have no real connection to all this, man. They're just as much as victims as everybody else in America is, man. Colonialism was no joke, man. They were ruthless with it, man. They were ruthless with that stuff, man. But the little pale-faced women were coming down and taking a few puffs and getting domed out in some village somewhere, man.
For madness.
Went back to Europe, mad ratchet up there twerking with a flat booty. So
twerking with a flat booty, but they were like, nope, because they put those big bustiers on in France and so forth, because that was to mimic the black woman's rear end. That's what that bustier was all about. Black women in Africa, they were like, oh shit, white bitches are walking around with no bunda. Let's get up in here and put something on there to show that we got ass as well. Even though it's fake, we going so they've been rolling on with fake asses for hundreds of years. And they're bustiers. Anyway, this
So, Nagano, are you saying fake asses ain't nothing new?
Say that again?
Are you saying fake asses are nothing new?
No. They was getting crunk. They was getting crunk with that shit back in the 15th century. But anyway, we'll leave that alone. But yeah. They envied it because the white boys were going crazy over them fat asses.
No. But real talk though, we get covered in the previous hangout where we talked about.
Your mic is break. Your mic is distant, man. I don't know what's going on with your mic.
All right, hold on, let me get.
No, but the continent could very well have been wealthy had it not been, for colonialism. Man, colonialism came in and destroyed everything.
Well, you guys forget which brought them on, which brought the Europeans with whet their appetite was Mansa Musa's. And this is everyone knows the story, or maybe many have heard about it. Mansa Musa, who had the Mali kingdom, which houses which Ghana actually would be a part of today. Mansa Musa, who was the king, did his European tour. Europeans came there to his country. This was in the later 14th century, 1470 or so. If my dates are a little off, I do apologize, but it's about that around that time. And he did a world tour. We're going on a world tour with Muhammad, my man. It was on an award tour. So they were all over the world, and he sprinkled so much gold dust around. Right, this is around Europe. He depressed the price of gold for years. For years. That's how wealthy Africa was. That's what brought the Europeans over to Africa to say, "Oh shit, these boys, they got it going on over there. Let's get up in here and get some of what they got while the getting's good." We invited them in. They came in as invitees in the 15th century, in the late 15th century. But by 1506 or 1507, they were coming in there with troops to invade, and that was first done by the Portuguese, and then the English, and so much followed after that. But that's kind of how that went down. But yeah, these guys had a very high society. You had the Muslim religion was very big then, and black men were writing all over the place and doing books and so forth. And you had a very learned people. That history got crushed through the slave trade. So really through the first and second industrial revolution, we were not a part of that because of this trade. Now that's why we're in the fourth and into the fifth while we need to really take advantage of that. But just to say, we had very advanced culture. We had great wealth, and our kingdoms were as beautiful as any of the ramshackle kingdoms that Europe had during those times. So just want to bring a little balance to this, but that's kind of what was going on. And Mansa Musa unfortunately whet the appetites of many Europeans to come in and look to conquer the continent as time went on. And that's still going on not so much today, but we see with gold and precious gems and so forth and all that, the beers and all that, all that is all related. Anyway, that's it.
All right. Let me read this last item on the docket. This one, the Times.co. Why cannabis will revive economy, says South African Finance Minister Tito. Oh, this is behind the paywall. South Africa's finance minister is on the road tweeting pictures of a marijuana plant on his farm, sharing academic papers about the plant's benefits, and posting a video of late reggae star Peter Tosh singing "Legalize It." Tito Mboweni, 60, has also put himself at the forefront of calls for the cannabis industry to be legalized to plug a vast hole in the country's tax receipts. Power shortages have constrained growth, and the Treasury is faced with a revenue shortfall equivalent to 2.73 billion euros. Mr. Mboni will outline plans to help the struggling economy in a budget speech this month. The minister who studied economics at the University of East Agala was behind the paywall. But I think we kind of got the gist that South Africa is going to be a heavy player in the cannabis industry. I'd be interested in seeing how this all plays out. I think Dollar Will was in the chat. He had some charts he wanted to bring up. But, around this discussion, this is very interesting stuff because, unlike African Americans, African Americans never really had control over their government in the way that many would perceive that they did. But Africans who are indigenous to the land, at the very least, could be a very, very wealthy place, man, just off of cannabis alone. And it's a shame, man, that they've been starved out of the market for the last 2 centuries, man, if not longer, 4 centuries, due to these sort of repugnant sort of policies from Europeans. I just find that to be interesting, man, because you see the same thing here in the United States where they criminalize marijuana, and I look at these police shows on YouTube, man, from A&E, and they go around busting these black men for having a joint, like put your hands behind your back and get on the ground, and it's like, wait a second, man, how can you criminalize this? How does this work?
And right now, in
more political than anything else. Sorry.
In the recent budget, the recent Trump budget has basically placed in money to basically prosecute any medical cannabis dispensary. So basically, in the budget, they've given money to the DOJ now. They're looking into giving money to the DOJ to prosecute basically medical cannabis licenses. And then, so if you have a medical dispensary, the DOJ can come after you. So now, even though you are in a state that has legal cannabis, since it's federally legal, the DOJ will come after you because previously they abolished funding for DOJ and they couldn't prosecute medical cannabis. But now Trump is introducing money for DOJ now to actually go after medical cannabis. So the industry is always changing. So you just need to keep abreast of what's going on domestically and internationally. And there's a lot of opportunity. Again, you don't really need to touch the plant. You can be in tech and formulate different ways to deal with the plant, or you can be in, again, production of goods, consumer goods and services like CBD infused products. So there are different ways you can get in the industry without actually touching the plant itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because now you can run your own simulations, right? 3D models and things like that, getting an idea of how the plant is going to grow if you connect these 2 strands together.
And you can also be the person who gathers all the information on each strain and how each strain, the different physical properties of each strain, and how that matches with different infused products. So you can actually have background knowledge of the cannabis plant itself. Like right now, I'm reading on the pharmacology of the cannabis plant, seeing the chemistry behind it. So having that knowledge, you can basically know if Coca-Cola comes in and say, hey, I want to infuse this, what's the best cannabis plant to infuse with? You can talk to your scientist, or you can talk to come up with variables. You just need to know what the plant is, then from there make your own innovations in the plant.
So, engineering cannabis, how did you get into cannabis?
To be honest with you, I've been with my tech background, I was looking for an industry where I can basically research what's coming out new. And I had people, when I was in college, I worked in basically where I help take care of patients.
Mhm.
And one of the patients I worked with was always complaining about the medication was too much. But when he took cannabis, he felt more better and active and he could do things. But he kept telling the doctor that the only way he could function was with cannabis.
Mhm.
But the doctor didn't listen to him. So they gave him basically the drugs that were basically subduing him. But when he took cannabis, he was more active and basically, and the pain was gone. So I took interest in that and like, okay, what's going on with this cannabis plant itself? So from there, I started looking at the research in it, and it got me fascinated. Then at that point, I said, okay, I know I've been doing data science for years. I know a lot of, and I started blockchain, and I'm seeing, oh, there's a lot of opportunities I can apply with this, what I know, especially in that and in cannabis. Then I started reading everything on cannabis, from the pharmacology to the cultivation to anything dealing with cannabis. I was absorbing it, and I found it very interesting with the papers too. Even with what's coming out with the CBDP and THCP, the new cannabis product, cannabis compound that just discovered. So each day it's basically interesting.
Mhm.
So, and that's how I got into it. And currently I can't smoke cannabis because I work in a highly sensitive place. So I can never smoke cannabis, but I can research it and see what's going on and know investigate every part of it. But I can't smoke it, but I will know everything about that cannabis plant.
Isn't that amazing that you can drink all the alcohol, but you can't smoke cannabis?
I think it's amazing.
Yeah. So I can't smoke cannabis, but I promise you, I will learn everything about that plant and everything I know about that plant and how
It's
to apply
crazy.
it.
It's crazy, and alcohol is so much more dangerous than
It is.
Yeah, look all the
It
accidents,
is.
per year that it causes. I mean,
And it,
I find that to be interesting. I mean, what happens if you drink a beverage that had cannabis infused in it?
that's the thing. That's one aspect I'm even looking into. What kind of legislations will be infused and will be coming out of there? And will that legislation mean that if you infuse cannabis with alcohol, meaning is it going to be its own beverage, its own kind of basically regulated product? Because now you're dealing with two psychoactive products, the ethanol and the cannabis, two psychoactive products. So is it going to be its own product where it's going to be have to be basically licensed differently? It has to be shipped differently. Then you have to then look at the laws in terms of DUI and all that. So if you start looking at that, if you start looking into it distinctively, you can see a lot of opportunities and a lot of questions you need to ask. And especially with the infusion, what are the concentration do you think is going to be likely to infuse cannabis, especially right now with what happened with Anheuser-Busch, where they basically created an infused cannabis product, but it's non-alcoholic. It's non-alcoholic. It sold quickly, like in a week. They sold out. So now if you have infused alcohol in it, basically they will sell out more. But what are the repercussions in it in terms of what is it going to affect your physiology and all that? So all these will be questioned, especially with the laws in them.
Yeah, I think what they need to do is based on the alcohol. I think, as far as the amount of milligrams of THC per serving, they have to basically parity that with the level of alcohol. I used to do, like, years ago, man. I used to manage a Jamaican restaurant, and the cat who was like the chef who ran it, he was a friend of mine, man. He's Jamaican, and what this dude used to do was he would go grab some bud, and he would throw that shit. He would take like 3 or 4 big nugs, and toss them in a bottle of rum, right? And what the alcohol would do is it would basically separate all the THC, the trichomes, all that shit from the bud as as it basically kind of just sat in alcohol. And then he would just kind of like just sip on the shit, you know. So I think what you got to do is you have to base the amount of milligrams of THC or cannabis. You have to base it on the type of alcohol or the percentage level of alcohol. So if you're at like 15% alcohol for say, you know,
Complex, your audio is so bad, people in the chat are complaining. So
okay, all right.
But you have to also realize THC is an hydrophobic compound, so that you can mix. It's not so you don't know the solubility in terms of alcohol and THC. So all the chemistry behind it needs to be looked into. So it's fascinating. The research is going to be fascinating. So the more you research it, especially now that we have a THCP that is 30 times more potent than what's out there right now. They just figured it out. THCP is 30 times more potent.
Hey,
So,
did they happen to mention what strain they found that in?
No, that's the thing. They've not mentioned strain. They've not even done human research to see the psychoactive effect of it. So there's a lot of research that needs to be done just by looking at that THCP and CBDP. So it's fascinating, and it's more each day, more products and more innovations are being looked at into the cannabis plant.
we got Dollar Will on the panel. What's going on, Dollar Will?
Can you hear me?
Dollar Will, what's going on, baby?
Hey, what's happening? I'm trying to get around this, working my way around this daggone screen. I'm trying to see how the screen share work.
Oh, you just,
yeah. And I didn't want to hijack the like whoever was talking.
No, that's fine.
And like right now, I don't even see. No, I tell you what, you guys go ahead, and then if I get it right, and I end up hijacking the screen, then I'm on. I'm still trying to get around Zoom, but go ahead now. I'll just buffalo in when I pick the right button.
I was going to tell you to control your way around. That will bring you to the next screen. If you
pick you up on it now.
On your Mac keyboard when you click this share screen, it asks you which screen do you want to
Yeah, and I did that, and it brought up saying your work email. Asked me out.
Oh, are you not logged into?
Yeah, I was. That's how I'm talking to you now.
Okay.
And like I said, go ahead, go ahead and click it. Y'all do your thing, and let me click around a few things, and I'll figure it out.
I know what's wrong. You got to update your Zoom. Yeah, go to your user your logo, and then it says update version. Hit update version. Just log out.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's gonna log you out, and we'll wait for you. And then yeah, we'll carry further discussion on this because obviously this is a hot topic, man. At least for in our opinion, to have this sort of discussion. Primarily because you don't have to get your hands dirty in this. Like Engineering Cannabis said, you don't have to smoke it in order to be involved in it. There's other ways, man. You can get involved in the cultivation of dirt. You can get greenhouses and what do you call these things? It's gonna kill me. Let me find the term for it because it's a problem.
Yeah, you can create soil, you can create nutrients, you can create lights, LED lights. You can do a lot. It's up to you. You can create anything you want in the industry, but you just need to just start learning about the plant. If you don't know anything about the plant, you can contribute. You got to learn about the plant and then see where you fit in and know what you need to do. You don't need to touch the plant to be successful in the industry. Mm-hmm. People think you need to open a dispensary. A dispensary is expensive. A cultivation is expensive. Don't get me wrong, to get a license. So you don't need to do this. All you just need to know is where the problems are, how you can solve it, and implement a solution. And there are a lot of problems in the cannabis industry. Lots of problems. And And again, the industry is still growing. We've not looked at international even when it becomes federally legal, how it's going to look like when you start exporting and importing cannabis, or when you start looking at again quality control, when you start looking at cultivating different strains. So there are a lot. You can even design the HVAC system for it.
Well,
There are lots of ways you can play into it.
I think they're making it really difficult because what I think, from what I've been hearing and what I've been getting some information on, it's kind of the tobacco industry. You know, the big players there are coming in. They're buying up all these miles of fields so they can do their huge grows, and they're keeping the law. They're jimmying around and making sure the laws are all fucked up right now because they don't want a lot of small players coming in. So when things do line up right, they're going to be right there to come in there and kind of run this thing like they run the cigarette business, and
But
that's the big play. It's now the big tobacco companies really trying to line up to kind of push everyone else out. That's why the price of these licenses are so high, $500,000 and all that, and they're making it really hard so black people don't get in, who've been basically targeted by law enforcement the most behind this, and they're seeing to it that you don't get in there trying to price you out, and then they're kind of leaving their space open so the big tobacco industry, the big players in that arena can come in and make their move because they'll come in with the billions.
You're right. You're right. But if you're in security, if you operate a security company that guards cannabis products, and you have maybe you're a security analyst and you have a way to basically secure the cannabis product, you will be in demand by every cannabis grower, every cannabis plant, every cannabis company, because you are the top-notch security for cannabis. So there are different ways you can do it, but yeah, growing it is not what I'll tell people to do. I'll tell people not to grow.
No.
Yeah, go for recreation. Don't grow the commercial grow thing. I mean, that's one way to get money, but honestly, man, there's so many ways to get money. I'm really a big believer in what Engineering Cannabis talks about. The tech side of it, it's untapped. When you mention weed, the first thing people think is growing weed, but no one thinks about the security. No one thinks about the technology side. No one thinks about the blockchain. No one thinks about none of that. None of those parts.
That's why I'm a proponent of, you don't need to touch it. You don't just read about it. You can be a consultant. Consult on how the cannabis product basically works. You can even create your own tea or create your own product and infuse it and say, hey, I have a great jam or a great jelly, a peanut butter infused cannabis product.
Or the tea bags, like you were talking about.
Tea bags, or lots of infusion. I mean, even ramen noodles, you can infuse ramen noodles. Everybody loves ramen noodles. After they smoke, they love ramen noodles. Infuse it in there and sell it.
Is it beef flavored or chicken?
I don't care. Infuse anything. Infuse chicken flavor if you want to.
The shrimp flavor.
Infuse anything. So I'm telling you, the idea is out there. You just need to pick one, go in and test it, play with it, and go from there. You really don't need to touch the plant and cultivate. You really don't need to open a dispensary. The people who make money in this industry are the people who create a brand. And if you create a brand that basically sells ramen noodles, you are sought after. So it's up to you.
Yeah, I remember you guys talking about the branding of this like last year. I remember you guys were talking about that. I believe I heard the complex, and then we'll kind of get into that a little bit. But yeah, I totally agree with that. I definitely think that's the way to go. You know, because they're trying to make all kind of obstacles just for people to get in on the growth side of the game and make it cost prohibitive and the whole deal. And you know, see Philip Morris and the crew, they're chomping at the bit, waiting at the wings to hop into this thing.
If they don't let you in the front door, open the window and go in.
Yep.
You don't need to ask permission.
Totally agree.
You don't find a way to get in. I know right now that like in YouTube, there isn't any content talking about cannabis, tech, or anything. Nobody, every cannabis channel talks of growing and all that, but that's the problem. Growing is not going to make you money at the end. No. It's your own brand. If you're a lawyer, your brand on how your brand is as a lawyer or accountant or tech or somebody, but it's not growing. And I keep saying it.
Yeah, but for people who are already,
if you're a small time cultivar, and you know you have your own little clientele that buys your stuff or whatever, man, that's about as profitable as it's gonna get for growing, because either you're doing it just kind of out of the love of it, and then there's people who like your stuff and you're just gonna sell it to them. That's gonna happen. But if you're trying to be a cultivator, then just understand that's going to take a lot of money.
Yeah, we got Dollar Will in the panel. Whenever you're ready.
Back. What's up, fam?
Hey, what's going on, Dollar Will?
All right, what's up, Cannabis with engineering Cannabis?
Yeah, man, what's up?
What's happening, brother? Yeah. I was looking at that little grow hut there. What's happening, Gone? The little grow hut there, you know, with people that's already into the micro gardening thing, you know, they might be able to grow their own stash, but you're not gonna scale that up, you know.
No, you actually grow it faster because it's insulated, right? So your the time to grow is actually considerably faster. I only showed that picture because that's something that we worked on last year. We did a whole entire live stream on it called Guerrilla Farming.
I mean, in terms of being competitive, though, how many could you really have enough grow cycles to be competitive? I mean, you know, everybody's going to be growing, so you're going to have to produce a large quantity to be able to maintain whatever clients you get.
Oh no, well, it's a little bit different. When you talk about growing, you're also talking about the supply chain aspect as well as the research and development. So you might be growing something specialized in there just for testing purposes or research and development purposes. Gotcha. So the variety of ways you can utilize that. But that's just an example of doing that on your own, right? So we worked on the farm last year with some Native Americans, man, who acquired land from the government recently. And, they were building out these biodomes, man, all over the place. So they were on some new stuff, man. So
all right. Let's see. Of course I came up to this. Y'all probably talked about it. JC Watt got a Black News channel.
Yeah.
Something to kick around, but I'm kind of falling. I've been using this site right here, Bar Chart, for a while. I'm kind of falling out of love with them because when the new year came, they chopped off a lot of historical chart data, so you can't go back that far. It's kind of pissing me off. So
how far can you go back?
Man, watch this. I think you can go back. Let me go to something.
They make it like a paid feature now?
Let me see. Like
yeah, they probably do. Yeah, that's what they probably do.
Yeah, they're trying to okay, I'll just use Dominion. Sugar. It's something like you don't really like get to go back 40 years or whatever, you know. And for a technical trade, you need as much data as you can get to see the structure.
That's right.
Oh, this one goes back, but a lot of let me just go back to what I was at Canopy. I don't even know if we get all. They're getting kind of sloppy about showing the updating their data for price splits, and so it's getting kind of sloppy.
They change how fundamentally.
Yeah, it's like this is just 10 years, and so it's a lot of things like even like currency charts. you can't see more than like 10 years. So, but anyway, the thing to that got my a couple of weeks ago, I did a little bit of sex marketing, put a sexy sister on a thumbnail on my channel, and said, I'm in the weed and I'm loving weed, and because this was the chart that caught my attention. The leader in that sector is Canopy Growth. So as this sector goes, that whole sector is gonna move. Now like Mike, you covered their earnings, right? They just came out with earnings recently, right? Did you read that?
Who was that?
Did you read that already? The results of Canopy Growth's earnings.
We didn't really get around to that.
Okay, is it on your list?
That was when Dollar Will had mentioned in the chat.
I don't want to if it's on the list,
The docket is finished.
No,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, but they basically, in short, they blew it out, So Michael cover that and break it down even more. But they blew it out in all sectors, and so it's just a rush to run to this space right here. And
you said lower. That's the lower low, right?
I'm sorry, your volume is kind of low for me.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. You said so because that was when you had said it in the chat, and I was like, yeah, well, come on up and talk about it. So this is that lower low.
Oh, basically from this point here
right there
in November, in mid-November, when it made this ultimate low right here. And the fact that it broke this trend line, that was the first key. That's something the running from the burning building could be over. Okay, and then when it made a high above this point here, okay, and then the length of this chart right here is this is like a 16-hour chart, so it kind of slows it down a little bit more. But we can see that we went from oversold the stochastic oscillator to extreme levels of overbought, and we're back down to oversold. And you see this big spike right here as momentum is turned north and the price hop. It's gonna keep going.
And that's when you said now is the time to buy, right?
Yeah, this is it. This is it.
Okay.
See, when it went, the fact that it made a high above this point here at this point in time, it defeated this point. So the optimism here defeated the pessimism here. Okay, so big money came back in. Now, this momentum is going to make another high. So now you're starting to make a series. When that happens, we will have made a higher high here relative to here. When we cross here, that'll be the second higher high. We got a higher low. Higher lows right here relative to here. And that is confirmation that there's excitement, real money flowing in. I can look at a volume chart of it, and that's probably even better. That might tell us something more. I didn't even look at that. I'll take a look at that real quick. Okay. Without me even zooming out, Nagon can tell you about that big green candlestick right there. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Let me see. So, okay, think.
What stock is this?
This is our Canopy Growth. Okay. So the way it works is when the leader of the sector start doing well, people just start indiscriminately buying everything in the whole sector.
That's a fact.
Even if the earnings is garbage, even if they haven't made a penny yet.
That's right.
People will just start buying it.
The hype of that industry will get it going. Let me ask you.
I'm sorry. Prices, one other thing. I just want to make this point. See this volume. This is the low part when it was falling down. I can't get it all on one screen. So you got this coming down here, but you see really no volume. But now as we get to this bottom, with this base, with this low, look at the big money, the big green spike. So the big money is here. They eating right now.
Coming in.
That's it.
Well, you had there was somebody in the chat that had mentioned that the stock was.
Quick question about
I'm sorry. Hold on. What was that?
Somebody let me read it. Somebody had mentioned, and I'm glad you just said it. That stock is in the toilet. I need it to rebound. No. This is the whole point why Dollar Will is saying buy.
Yeah, you don't sell this. You don't. I'm a swing trader at heart. Now on my channel, I'm trying to become a better day trader, but in my heart, I'm a swing trader. And for people who like the hodlers right now will be rewarded. The buy and hold camp. This is what they're going to be.
Yeah, I can see that.
And later, you're going to see me doing more videos this week because the hell is here. I don't think we're getting out of maybe 2 weeks at the max. This could be the last good week. It could be in this market right now. This sector is going to be fine.
I need to ask a question because
I just want to ask Dollar Will this very quickly. Dollar Will, where do you see the resistance level on this?
I gotta open up. See, this is the problem with I gotta go to investing.com or something to see more data. But we're gonna go here. I would take us another Fibonacci level above here. So once we break above this point, we should be able to get to the $100 area without a whole lot of problem.
Nice.
And I'm not saying that's the top. That might be the first pause. So what's gonna happen? Just like you see on this price action here is showing you. Hold on. How and Go can tell you about the gaps. This is a gap, so the price move. It left a big space between the top of this candlestick and that one. So that's telling you that the big money, the enthusiasm is so strong. They're not even trying to get a great price. They're just hitting buy. They just coming to the computer and hitting buy.
Yeah, the money's coming in. The money's coming in
because they know that all of this is a bargain area, and you don't need to be messing around with pennies trying to save a penny on the price.
Right? You just buy.
Right.
Yeah, and so it's going to keep going, and people are going to wonder. We saw what Beyond Beef did, and this is going to become the story next.
I have to agree with you, Will. I'm looking at this. I must agree.
So I think if you take too long, it's going to get to $100. I mean, it could be a month from now. It could be $100. It could be whoa, what the hell happened? Yeah, it's not going to mess around. So I don't really see. I see it taking this out, and I think the all-time high might have been. Let me put it on a daily. I can see more data. Look at that big green candlestick.
It is.
When you get that volume and you're already at an oversold state, it's one thing if you get a big spike at the top. That means it's shot its wad, it's done. But when you get this at the oversold state, that means you better get on the train.
Yep.
You see it right there.
Looking like you may have a play here.
So this is the type of trade that will make everybody look smart, because all you really got to do is just pour money in, and like once it breaks above this level here, like right, if I was to buy this right now, I would put a stop loss right here, right at this price low, which would be instructions telling your to my broker that if the price drops below here, sell automatically. Just get me out. So I wouldn't mess around. Now, as everybody knows, I am not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice for you. This is Dollar Will's idiot opinion. I'm just a YouTuber, just trying to handle my own money. And if I was loaded like that, I wouldn't even be on YouTube. Okay, so I'm trying to come up like everybody else. All right, just sharing a little knowledge. But this was the prior high here at the around the $60 level. We're gonna take this out. This is gonna be gone. So we could get to $100 easily before it even slows down. I wouldn't mess around with this, But this gonna, so it's in the right area. It's in the in one level. It's in the like the consumer staple space. And another level, it's like you can see it as like a pharmaceutical. It's in so many different areas. It's being infused in beer and the beverage sector. That's like I'm in love with the beverage sector too. So it's just winning in a whole lot of ways, and it's getting global love, as y'all were talking about earlier.
Well, I'm sorry, Engineering Cannabis actually had a question for you. I'm sorry.
Yes.
And the infusement of it's only going to happen in Canada right now, because the laws right now says you can't infuse alcohol with cannabis in the United States. And in terms of Canada, the laws are coming out, but it's not enacted yet. So the infusement of alcohol, these are non-alcoholic beverages. So they're infusing non-alcoholic beverages with cannabis, and it's selling out, immediately selling out. And in terms of the graph, I wanted to ask, where is the variable, where if the laws, for instance, the laws for the DOJ and all that, how do you account for that variable in terms of, in case of anything, in terms of this graph?
Okay, I am a technical purist. I don't take anything into account other than the price chart.
Okay.
So if for people wanting that balanced view, you would listen to me, a technical purist, or others like me, and then you'd have to listen to other fundamental style folk, because what we do, we just watch the flow of the money, because as technical traders, we take we assume the position that we will never know the information. We will not, let me get this out. We'll never know the information in a timely fashion. That's one. Two, there are people out there that will always know more than us, and they'll know the information sooner than us. However, we will always be able to watch what they do, how they move their money. And so the price action will show us when prices have stopped declining and started rising. We may not know the fundamental reason why. As technical traders, we don't care. The news catches up to the charts. And you're seeing it right here when that low was put in November. We didn't know why. We didn't know, but somebody knew.
Yeah,
no, you know what? And you know what? Actually, Dollar Will, it's interesting you say that, because if I have to actually think back to November, and we may even need to maybe dig up some, search YouTube, but I want to say back in November, what's his name? Kramer, the dude from CNBC, he was shitting on cannabis stocks at the time.
Watch him flip his opinion.
Huh?
Watch him flip his opinion.
Oh yeah. He'll definitely flip his opinion.
That's why I wanted to bring this up. I think it's interesting you mentioned that, because if I go back, matter of fact, as I say this, but as I think back around November 2019 last year, he was shitting all over cannabis stocks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Kramer, I've seen him make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, and I'm just one other. This is my own. It's not cannabis, but this is why he's going to flip, because this is Philip Morris. I know they're in different groups, but people are going to think of them alike, and this thing is hitting a little bottom too, kind of going sideways. Philip Morris, and this is a daily chart. Oversold like crazy, going sideways. So it's getting close to time for people to start looking at Philip Morris. So it's going to be hard for him to be at the same time that Philip Morris is going to be rising, and we can see an upside down head and shoulders here.
I knew I wasn't tripping. I knew I was not tripping. This is from, I'm gonna post this shit. See, now motherfuckers think we're a joke over here. No, this is from November 21st, 2019. I knew, because this shit, I specifically recall this shit popping up on my feed. He was shitting on pot stocks, man. I'm gonna post the link right here.
Well, yeah, he's always going to flip his position.
Yeah, I've seen this guy flip flop more than a flap.
Right,
man. That's a Waffle House, man. I mean, I'm serious. This guy flip flop a lot, and he's got to do that. He's playing both sides. He is using some technical analysis. He's using some fundamentals. He's just winging. I think a lot of times, I'm sorry, with Kramer, I think he's winging it a lot of times.
I like the guy.
I mean, I don't dislike him, but
it just seemed coincidental that we're looking at this chart, and that low, it hit November, right?
Yeah. This one was September.
That was September, and then the other one was November.
November. Yeah, I'm gonna put it back. Kind of.
Yeah, I mean, he flips flop so much, he should start wearing Crocs, man. So.
Yeah, but he will. It's gonna be too in his face. Like when stocks do this gap like that, like even the day traders notice this, because there's a trading strategy called gap trading, And so they pull up a screen and they just look for what gap today, because that's telling you where the real enthusiasm is. So the day traders who want to make quick money, there's a whole strategy just looking at what's gapping every day. You're gonna find a lot of these daggone cannabis stocks are gonna be gapping every day. So he can't ignore it. He can't ignore Kramer or any other naysayer. They cannot ignore it.
Yeah, and then you're hitting it right in the head. And then if you're like a day trader, as you would know, you're in and out with teenies.
Yeah.
You know, 16th or here. Teenies are a play. So if you can get that out of the day on a stocks like that, you're doing actually halfway decent. So yeah.
So Matty Ghost, if you're listening, I know you trade them pennies, brother. You might want to see if you can find you some penny stocks that's related to cannabis.
He cashed out on the hemp stocks, bro. He bought that Charlotte Web some time back. We were talking about it on This Well Power.
Yeah, this is the time to look at that stuff.
Hey, Douglas, somebody's asking you to post your channel in the chat.
I think Zona already posted it.
Oh, okay, all right.
Oh, I forgot. What's up, Raining Woman?
Yeah,
I know she out there.
yeah.
So
I think a lot of the trajectory is really dependent upon the legality of cannabis on the Western stage, right? Because what value would it serve if it can't be sold or if it can't be mobilized, or monetized, I should say. Sorry. So a lot of that is going to be dependent upon that. In my opinion, not saying this is facts, based on the laws and and whatnot. That's why when you saw California go legal, you start to see them things start to go through the roof.
Yeah, well, I will say, Mike, again, that big green candlestick I showed for the volume, there's a part of this market, and it is even the institutional money. They're not as rational as we think. They will just join a trend just because they know how to trade, they know how to safely do it. As lay folk, we think in terms of buy and hold or set and forget. No, they don't think like that. They will watch the chart. So they'll put the money in to something that's questionable, but they will move their stop loss up. Like they got a stop loss probably right here, saying if the price falls like this this ceiling now has become a floor. So this is going to be price support. So that they got in here, they caused this thing to pop. So they'll put a little stop loss right here, which says as long as the price stays above this line, it doesn't matter. None of those facts matter because they're not losing money. As long as they're not losing money, none of that's fundamental stuff matters. They're in this to make money. And the news cycle lags. But again, I worked in news all my life. News is by definition what has already happened.
Yep.
Okay. So if you're trying to get ahead, you have to as traders, we condition ourselves to basically buy when everybody's hating it. As Warren Buffett said, buy when there's blood, blood in the street. So you have to love it when nobody else does. And be early, in that, basically in this breakout. And the news will turn because the people buying it causing this gap, they become the news. And so then the news cycle catches up, then the general public responds to it because it made the news. But by that time, it's already like doubled in price.
That's the FOMO at that point.
That's right. That news creates the FOMO, right? Exactly. Exactly. But they're not buying on that. They know that it's just too much money in it. That same money, we see it in America, how whether these politicians have been bought off or what, but the climate legislation is changing, embracing it. That trend is not going to go the other way. And then there's the greed factor. When this market rolls over, I'm talking about the NASDAQ, okay? All that's the sexy stuff that was making money. This is going to be the new place to make money. Capitalism, we don't have no values outside of make money. We'll invest in the devil. It doesn't matter. It's just cold-blooded like that. So all that legislation it's really gonna pick up. When this becomes one of the few places to make money.
And this is another avenue in terms of cannabis to make money, financial services. So you don't really need to touch the plant, financial.
That's right, trading.
Yeah,
Make
you get
money.
lots of people that gets rich in this shit based off of the shit that Dollar was talking right now.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty much all I had, unless anyone had any other chart they wanted to look at. But yeah, but this is sexy right here. This is straight. This is love.
This was the $1 Will, because that was the one where you mentioned the chat. I was like, yeah, no, come on up, let's talk about it.
Yeah, this is
that's good stuff. Good stuff. I think the analysis on that's pretty right on time.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty dead on.
All right.
Good stuff.
No, thank you for that.
All right, thanks, brothers.
Yeah, good stuff.
All right, I'm gonna go listen from the sideline. Thank y'all.
No, that's cool. Thanks.
What's up, Dollar? Thank you, bro.
That's up. What's up? Yeah, that was pretty good.
No, I definitely think that, fertilizer, all those agricultural staples actually makes a lot of sense to start investing into now.
Yeah, there are a lot of ways you can invest, and again, financial services, from research, even again, I said research, I've said it again. The federal government, once it becomes federally legal, the federal government will dump money to know the effects of cannabis in minority neighborhoods, do a social machine learning, AI.
Oh, they've already done that.
No, the government, yeah, but they will, with the introduction now, it's federally legal. Now they will want to know the effects of it and social aspects of it. And they will pay people to actually study that. So there are a lot of opportunities. All you need to do is look at it in ways you can basically figure it out. And you don't really need to touch the plant. I will always tell people it's quite expensive to touch the plant, but it's inexpensive to provide services and solutions for the cannabis industry.
Very much so.
What was I gonna say? I had something I was gonna bring up, but no, I think that's it, man. I don't have anything else to bring up right now. I think we've gone through the docket. We definitely think that
Mike, I'll put a docket together for next Sunday that'll include the sharing reviews. Like, I literally just got my daughter from the party about 20 minutes ago, so I didn't.
No, that's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. So we'll circle back to the sharing reviews on the next one.
Right, and hemp cultivation should not be forgotten about this as well, because that's actually becoming throughout residential homes now. All sorts of applications for hemp. I saw
the whole textile side of things, man. That's a whole other discussion altogether, outside of just consuming it and medicinal, recreational, all that. We're talking like textiles. That's a whole other discussion.
All right, hey, there's an international market for cannabis, so everybody should just think big. Don't limit yourself to just a domestic area. Think of a brand event that can go international too, and start looking at the laws and looking at the cannabis plant itself, and go from there.
Oh, shoot. All right. Thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button if not already done so. Share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. Doc in the description beneath the video for you to reference.
Ghost.
All right. What's up, everyone?